All right, good to see everybody. Let's see if the internet is any good here in the office tonight. If it's not, we'll probably have to go outside. Let me know if you guys in the chat could hear me. Let me actually do a test. Can you hear me? Question mark. Yeah, CL is in the chat, says happy FOMC Eve. It's going to be a crazy day tomorrow for sure. All right, Danny says the sound is fine. Okay, cool. Awesome, guys. Well, welcome back. I do want to apologize for being absent yesterday. Wait, is today Tuesday? Yeah, today is Tuesday. What the heck? I'm getting all crazy here. But guys, sorry about yesterday. It was a very, very busy day for me. Had to be up early for some meetings. But today is a very significant day on Wall Street. We are going to be talking about the National Association of Realtors as they released their existing home sales report today. Now, I think you guys are going to be surprised because if you remember correctly, every single month we cover this, okay? And for 12 straight months in a row, existing home sales in the United States has declined. Now, February, we actually broke that streak. So existing home sales actually went up about 14.5% in February, ending that crazy 12-month streak of declines. But we're going to go through the report in detail. You know, now that I'm behind my computer, I'm going to post a copy of the report in the chat. So if you just look for my highlighted name, Walks on Wall Street, you'll see a hyperlink to the National Association of Realtors website. And we're finally starting to see what we've been talking about for a year, right? So usually how a business cycle works as it relates to the housing market is you'll have a fundamental shift in the interest rate environment. And what that does is that compresses sales transactions, right? So if you think about 2021, you know, homes were flying off the shelf. Everybody was buying a home. It was extremely, extremely easy to sell real estate. But then as we shifted from quantitative easing to QT, the Federal Reserve began to raise interest rates. sales transactions have really started to grind to a halt, mainly because the cost of money is getting very expensive. So if you notice something very unique about this particular existing home sales report is that we finally have some price declines. And I think this is good for buyers. I think this trend is going to continue, in my opinion. I think this is personally this is healthy for the market. We've all been saying prices need to come down. I think sellers need to, sort of come to terms with reality that they probably can't command the prices that they wanted to command, in 2021. So again, if you look at the seasonally adjusted annual rate of home sales, we came in right at 4.58 million. And this is the largest monthly percentage increase in home sales since July of 2020, since the pandemic. So about 22% was that month-over-month increase in July of 2020. However, if you compare this on an annual basis, right, so a year-over-year basis, obviously the sales transactions have declined. So again, it's very important not to mix month-over-month data with year-over-year data. So compared to February of last year, home sales declined 22.6%, which makes total sense, right? But I think the biggest thing that we need to hit on tonight is that the median existing home sales price finally, my God, thank God, decreased about 0.2% from the previous year to about $363,000. So this is good news. This is what we want to see. Markets coming back to normal. We're going to talk about the bond market today. We're going to do a deep dive into this housing report. And everybody, tomorrow's the big day. I mean, tomorrow's the money day on Wall Street. We have the FOMC meeting where we are going to hear from our friend, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. All right, so without further ado, let me pack up my bags here, everybody. I want to wish you a very happy start to the week. Hopefully you guys had a good start. I think we're going to head uptown tonight. It's 56 degrees here in Manhattan. I see my good friend Golden City. Hey, long time no see, dude. Thank you for joining us tonight. I see British Gray, Dr. Longies, Keith. What's up, Keith? Welcome. Emerson Sanjib is here from Quebec City, cooking. Welcome, Wendy England. Good to see you guys. Markets were actually pretty strong today as well. However, if you look back throughout history, it's usually not the best of a sign to have, equities rallying so hard into an FOMC meeting. Sometimes the speculation is that can, persuade the Fed president's or the Fed chair's decision to maybe raise rates more aggressively. But we'll talk about it tonight. Before I just turned on the live stream here, for those of you who don't know, we are streaming from 135 Madison. This is actually a WeWork office here. But before I turned on the camera to start streaming, 50 basis points was actually trending on Twitter, which I thought was funny. There's a lot of speculation now that the Fed is going to raise by 50 basis points. I'm not buying it. We'll talk about that later. Hey, Lex S. Good to see you, my friend. System go out when we're in the elevator. We'll see. Hey, Rafet is here. Welcome. Towerade says, I hope it isn't very chilly outside. It shouldn't be. It should be like 60. Hey, have a good one. It should be like 56 degrees last time I checked. But everybody, we are now here on the ground floor. We're standing on the corner of East 31st Street and Madison Avenue. It's a beautiful night out here in New York, about 56 degrees, not too windy. I think today in Central Park it got up to a high of about 60 degrees. But on tonight's live stream, we're actually going to be headed uptown towards the one and only One Vanderbilt building. Hey, Justin S. is here. Good to see you, Justin. Gary Carpenter. Now, before we get right into the main topic, which is going to be the National Association of Realtors existing home sales report, I think it's also very appropriate to acknowledge the crazy movements in the bond market yet again. I posted a couple charts on Twitter specifically as it relates to the 1-year US Treasury yield and the 10-year US Treasury. And rates are trying to make a strong comeback. I mean, if you have TradingView.com or Bloomberg, if you're at your Bloomberg terminal, wherever you guys look at your charts, you guys got to look at a daily chart of both the 1-year US Treasury yield, right? Now make sure we're looking at the yield, not the bond price. And look at the 10-year US Treasury yield. I mean, we've been having as much of, 75 basis point swings in a matter of days. Now, obviously, that was really prompted by the Federal Reserve's program to bail out or backstop depositors. But, we've pretty much seen a mini flash crash in rates. However, today, the 10-year US Treasury yield did rally, as well as the 1-year. Everybody, take a look at this. Look at how gorgeous the Empire State Building looks tonight. Now, this is the view on the corner of East 33rd Street and Madison Avenue. The Empire State Building is lit up in the classic red, white, and blue. Hey, Sparks Carnival, you're right. It says, let's go Nike. Earnings per share, 79 cents versus 59 cents expected on revenue of $12.39 billion versus $11.47 billion expected. Yeah, you're right. So Nike reported, yesterday or earlier today? I forget, but you're correct. Now, I was actually pretty surprised by the report, I'm not going to lie. But I think we could probably use Nike's earnings report as a proxy for the health of the consumer, right? I mean, if people are out there spending and buying clothes and, buying athletic wear, what does that say about the broader based economy? Now, additionally, I believe this is finally the conclusion of earnings season for the Dow. Thank God, right? I mean, we've been so busy. We've had so much on our plate throughout earnings season, but Nike was actually the last stock in the Dow, obviously the Dow 30, to report. So we are now finally finished with earnings season for the Dow, and hopefully calmer waters will prevail, and hopefully volatility will move by the wayside. However, everybody, check this out. Just in time for earnings season to conclude, we have the FOMC meeting tomorrow. So we're going to hear from our pals at the Federal Reserve. We'll talk about that too. Hey, Zozo Bob is here. What's up, Zozo Bob? Buy the books is good sign for the economy in terms of Nike's earnings report. I agree. Golden City East 35th and Madison Avenue. Yes. I think what we're going to do is we are going to cross the street, but I think I want to stay on Madison Avenue because very rarely do we walk up Madison. We usually walk up exclusively like Fifth Avenue and the like, so I don't know, I think we'll stay here. Now, before we officially get started, you see this beautiful building right in front of us. This is actually One Vanderbilt. And somebody sent me an article on Twitter today that it actually had to be evacuated, the building, due to reports of uncontrollable shaking on some of the higher floors there. Now, did anybody follow up on that story anymore? Now, right when I got out of work for the day, I was actually walking past One Vanderbilt, and that's when somebody tweeted it at me. Now, allegedly, as I was sifting through the article really fast, it was, I think, due to elevator problems. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, that sounds a little bit concerning, right? I mean, if they're doing construction on the elevators and it's causing the building to shake uncontrollably to the point where they evacuate the building, I don't know. I mean, look, thank God everything's all right. I mean, the building looks to be in one piece here, but it's kind of crazy, right? Hey, 45 is here. It says Madison Avenue is uniquely gorgeous. Thank you, 45. Good to see you. Yeah, Western Mass Dave says, wow, that sounds a bit scary. It was very strange. Really, really strange. Okay, so somebody says it was just a maintenance issue on the upper floors causing it to shake. Gotcha. Okay. Very interesting. Okay, so Sparks Carnival says, just in, the Nike CFO warned that Nike is taking a cautious approach to planning, giving uncertainty about consumer confidence in the economy. Yeah, I mean, now, if you looked at a lot of the comments, right, as we've moved through earnings season here, pretty much every corporate executive that came on the call was very skittish about guidance, right? I think that was pretty much just par for the course. Now, I think he's spot on as it relates to consumer sentiment and consumer confidence. Now, if you remember, on Friday, that is when we got the University of Michigan consumer sentiment report out, and it actually declined. I think it declined by 6 points. Now, just as a quick reminder, it's interesting that the consumer sentiment report, so the U Michigan consumer sentiment, declined, but 85% of all of the surveys were sent out before all of this big banking collapse and debacle in the United States. I'll give you guys a quick look down Madison Avenue. So if you look all the way in the distance, this is actually Madison Square Park. Really beautiful down there. So what I'm thinking, everybody, and we briefly talked about this before, if 85%, look at how beautiful this church is. If 85% of the survey was sent out prior, or I should say before, the banking collapse, and consumer sentiment still came in very, very negative, what's that going to say about next month? I mean, that's my main concern. So, because I mean, this thing freaked a lot of people out, right? You know, I had a meeting today. I was talking to some, top real estate agents in New York City, and they were telling me that, it's very hard to get deals done right now. Some buyers are a little skittish, and even some banks, right? Some banks are not lending. Now, Signature Bank is one of the banks based in New York, actually, that went under, and they had pretty big exposure to the real estate industry and the real estate business here. So you could just imagine the kind of impact that had. Everybody, really quick, check this out. This is the very famous Morgan Library. It sits on the corner of East 36th Street and Madison Avenue. This is actually one of my favorite libraries in all of the city, and I think it's very underappreciated. A lot of times the tourists will say, oh, you got to go to MoMA, you got to go to the Met, and those are great museums. I'm not saying they're not. They're definitely fantastic. However, I think there's just a certain uniqueness about the Morgan Library that I like a lot. Now, you guys know I said this many times. It is a tie for me, okay? It's between the Morgan Library and the Henry Clay Frick Museum on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Now, if you ever get a chance to come to New York, right, maybe if you visit frequently, or if you're coming here on business or vacation, you gotta take my advice on this, okay? You really, really have to. You gotta make some time to visit, number one, the Henry Clay Frick Museum, okay, which is on the Upper East Side. And then number two, you gotta come here, the Morgan Library. Now, it's interesting because some of the, I would say, artifacts and the exhibits at the Frick Museum is actually shared between the Morgan Library and vice versa. So sometimes the exhibits will be on loan to this library and vice versa. I think you guys would appreciate that. I'll try to give you a more encapsulated look from the street here. Hey, Ryan Beck, what's up, man? Dan Zhang is here. Says, Tom, do you think cash buyers right now have lots more negotiation power on the table in the current economic condition? I do. I do. Now, Dan, that's a really good question. I'll tell you why. Just so we're all on the same page here, if you guys type !NAR in the chat, okay, so once again, !NAR in the chat, I programmed the Nightbot to give you guys the direct link to the National Association of Realtors existing home sales report. Now, if you click that link, scroll down about a quarter of the way through the page. I think it's about a quarter of the way down. And to Dan Zhang's point, does anybody want to take a wild guess at the percentage of existing home sales that were closed in all cash deals, meaning the buyer didn't have to get any financing? Does anybody want to take a guess? It was a pretty significant percentage, and I was definitely not expecting that. We'll cross the street just so I can give you guys a closer look here at the Morgan Library. Once again, on the corner of East 37th Street at Madison. Really beautiful building here. Steve says 40%. Good to see you, Steve CR. Not quite. 26%. Wow, that's a really good guess, dude. That's almost like right on the money, dude. Wow. Some of you guys got it right on the money. Yeah, so all cash sales in the month of February made up about 28% of total transactions. That's pretty significant. Check out some of these brownstones here. These are absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous buildings here. So think about that for a moment. All cash sales made up 28% of transactions. That was actually up from 25% in Feb of 2022. So to Dan's point, yeah, I mean, money talks, right? Just plain and simple. And now I do want to try to I want to sort of play both sides of the fence and give both sides of the story here. Look at this one, guys. This one is just gorgeous architecture here. Hey, Steph UH says, Tom, my brother does a lot of cash closing here in Florida, big retirement area. Very nice. Yeah, I mean, if you do a cash closing, you definitely have more negotiating power, right? Because you can close right away. You're ready to close. So it's a really good point by Dan. TC says, that's insane. It must be people selling and taking equity from the previous home. That's an interesting thought. That's a really interesting thought. And you may be right, and I'll tell you why. Now, here is the most critical, I would say the most important piece of data that comes out of the National Association of Realtors Existing Home Sales Report. And you guys already know what I'm going to say before I say it. But it's the percentage of buyers that were first-time home buyers, right? So the percentage of buyers in the existing home sales market that were first-time home buyers. And you guys know why I think this is so important, right? Because if you look at the data and you look at all of the studies, right? If you look at so many studies out there, the number one way, right? And this is concrete data, the number one way a self-made first-generation millionaire creates their first $1 million in net worth is mostly in equity in their home, right? That's just the data. I mean, we could argue about, is buying a single-family home a good investment? Is it not? Should you buy a cash-flowing piece of real estate? Should you buy stocks? Yeah, we could argue about that, and I get that, and I definitely respect all of those opinions. But I've been noticing a very, very serious trend. And I've actually modeled this in Excel. I created an Excel model outlining the percentage of first-time home buyers purchasing homes has been in steep, steep decline for years now. And that's not good, because that is essentially saying that home ownership is essentially becoming out of reach for the average person. And in my view, that's not right. I think the American dream, it's been to be able to have a good job, be able to raise a family, and own a piece of property in the United States. That, in my view, that's what the American dream always been. So if you look at the percentage of first-time buyers, right? Again, if you look about, I think it's 3/4 of the way down the page on the source that I gave you guys, only 27% of sales in February was first-time home buyers. This was down from 31% in January. Now, if you look at a year-over-year basis, so if we think about February of 2022, the percentage of first-time home buyers was 29%. So on a year-over-year basis, we are in free fall too, and in significant decline. So I don't know. I don't think a lot of people are talking about that. I don't think a lot of people are paying too much attention to that. But I think it's critical, especially speaking from a Generation Z or a millennial, right? It's tough. It's getting really, really tough for younger people to be able to afford homes. I mean, what are you guys seeing? I can't be the only one who's noticing this. I mean, what are you hearing from your kids? Maybe you guys have kids. Maybe you have grandchildren, right? Maybe you have friends. Are you sort of seeing the same thing happening? And do you think that the United States is going to turn into a renter nation? I don't know. What do you guys think? Hey, Randy the Machine says, Tom, in Florida, you need cash to close without new roofs and to avoid high insurance, which is out of control. Well, Randy the Machine, I actually have to go back down to Florida next week for that exact problem. I have to go back down to Miami. I have to let the inspector in the house because Citizens, which is the main insurance provider down there in Florida, right? It's pretty much like a monopoly for obvious reasons. I got to renew my insurance policy, and it's probably going to go through the roof. Hey, Rough Ed's the same here, Tom. All rent for the future, unfortunately. JP, hey JP, good to see you. Electric Ways says, we are also at the lowest in history for marriages. Lots more single people out there would rather rent. With social media addiction, money is now spent even more than ever on looking good. I didn't actually never knew that. I didn't know marriages were in decline. I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that. I had no idea. Maybe there's a correlation there, who knows? Alex Wise says, Tom, 6-figure income doesn't buy you a home here in California anymore. Yeah, I mean, California's a really big state, and you probably obviously know the market way, way better than I do, right? But here's how I think about it. If you think about a big place like New York, okay, a lot of tourists, right? Okay, a lot of people from out of town. I just want to show you guys this bar. It's always a pretty big standout on the street. Now, a lot of people you say, oh, I'm from New York. And they're like, oh my God, how was it growing up in Manhattan? And you're like, no, okay. New York is a big state. All right, New York is huge. And if you can find places in New York State where you can purchase a home, you know, for maybe $200,000, right? A pretty decent piece of property. However, are there going to be any jobs in that location? Is that where people want to live? Probably not. Is it sort of the same thing in California, or is the whole state totally overpriced now? Hey, the ABX girl from the Bronx, good to see you. Thank you for joining. Brick Stonewall says, Tom, more people in places like New York and California will be lifelong renters, priced out unless they move. Well, again, referring back to the data, and there's a lot of good comments in the chat. This is 40th Street now. We're going to head up in a little bit. Hey, Brad's Brain says, Tom, a 6-figure income will buy you a nice place in Houston. You know, I always get recommended these real estate videos, right? Like the house tours in some places of Texas. And like my jaw is on the floor with how gorgeous these places are. It's just such a, you know, because you got to understand, you know, being from New York, it's like, oh my God, $700,000 is going to get me a studio apartment on the Upper West Side, right? You know, less than 700 square feet. And some of these places in Texas are huge. But then again, I mean, you know, a lot of people like city living. People want to live in the city. They want to be around other people. So it's definitely interesting. Hey, the ABX girl says, Tom, there is a growing number of Generation Z seeking to leave the United States altogether due to the cost of living, and older Americans are retiring out of the US. You know, the ABX girl, I saw an interesting thing that exactly supplements your point. I think it was a brief video on CNBC Make It. Does anybody ever watch those videos from time to time? CNBC, sometimes they'll interview retirees. And it was this lady, really nice lady too. I think she was a former teacher. She actually decided to retire in some town in Mexico. I forgot what the name of it was. But she was renting a gorgeous place. I'm talking about gorgeous. I think it was like a 3-bedroom apartment for like $750, right on the water, near the ocean. And I mean, to your point, the United States is just getting so expensive. Now, retirees also have to take into account healthcare, right? And healthcare is not cheap in the United States either. So, all really good points. Hey, Nina says, yes, Generation Z is leaving the United States. Who can afford these rents? Cost of living is crazy if we're keeping it real. No, I get it, man. The ABX girl says, lots of people migrating to Portugal. Interesting. Hey, Mystery says, hey, Tom, hope you're good. Are there any protests going on there? A lot of people have been tweeting at me today about protests. I'm totally oblivious, guys, to all of the political stuff that's going on. So no, I haven't seen anything. But, as you guys know, I've muted specific keywords. So any news that relates to the president, former President Donald Trump and Joe Biden, I just don't receive that news. I programmed an algorithm, a script in Python, that it automatically will remove any articles that would have been suggested to me with those keywords, so I never have to deal with any of the nonsense. It's actually quite refreshing. But guys, let's, I gotta tell, this is a really good conversation because everybody, almost unanimously in the chat, is saying, look, people can't afford New York, people can't afford California, where are they going? Well, this is actually showing up in the data now. So again, if you refer to that National Association of Realtors existing home sales report, we're actually seeing prices decline the most on the West Coast and in the Northeast. And if you look at the report, where prices climbed is in places like the Midwest. And I'd bet you anything, and you guys are probably spot on this, you guys are way more sharp and on it and together than I am, people are probably leaving high-cost cities like New York, like LA, even some smaller cities within New York that are pretty expensive too, like Buffalo. And they're probably buying property in the Midwest, where you have, this is the Steven Schwartzman building, by the way. Looks beautiful. Unfortunately, they put the barricades up. But, again, let's say if you can work remotely and you can take a 15% pay cut if you work remotely from the Midwest, right? Your quality of life is probably still going to be a lot better, especially if you have kids, right? Because the vast majority of people who want to be in New York City are younger in their careers, they're very ambitious, they want to meet people, they want to hang out till 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's real fun city life. But if you have kids and if you have a family, don't you kind of want to have your kids run around in the backyard and hang out? I think a lot of Americans are opting for that. So you're seeing those markets being bid up. You're seeing the Southern Florida market being bid up. Those prices increase yet again on a month-over-month and year-over-year basis, in addition to the Midwest. And you're seeing Northeast and the West prices actually decline a little bit. But whenever prices decline, I think that spells opportunity. But we'll talk about that a little bit more. These are the main two lions here outside of the New York Public Library. Hey, Chris Beeman, what's up? Says, hey, Tom, people from the Midwest are buying property here in the Valley like crazy. Yeah, Arizona has been a very hot real estate market too, for sure. I want to show you guys the architecture here. Hey, Brian, what's up? Jimmy Scams One says a lot of corporate job salary transfers as well. Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is just run your cost analysis, right? Let's say if you're at XYZ tech company in New York City and you're making $150,000, but you want to tell your boss that, hey, I want to work in the Midwest somewhere, right? You're probably going to have to take a little bit of a pay cut. If it's only 15%, you could still, probably get a lot more bang for your buck in terms of square footage. It's a really good point. Hey, Atomic Punk NYC says, good evening. More apartments available in Manhattan below 96th Street than would be. I'm starting to see that too. I'm really starting to see that too. And look, I think that's a good thing for the market, guys. And we sort of talked about the life cycle of a business cycle, right? How it works. And there's an old saying that the housing market pretty much is the business cycle. So what you have is, once interest rates start to go up, which they have, right? They've gone up almost 500 basis points in a little under 2 years, which is just unbelievable movements in the bond market. You don't automatically have price declines. You never do. It takes time. And the reason for that is because, and you guys can probably attest to some of these stories. Really quick, we're looking at the Chrysler Building. Look at how amazing the Chrysler Building looks tonight. It's actually one of my favorite Art Deco buildings in the entire world, probably next to the Empire State Building. This is the building that we had some problems with today, everybody. This is One Vanderbilt. There was reports of extreme shaking and tremblings. They actually had to evacuate everybody in the building. Thank God everything was all right. Allegedly it was just some elevator issues that were causing the shaking in the building. So hopefully, thank God, nothing serious there. But as interest rates go up, prices don't automatically decline in the housing market because the housing market is not as liquid as the stock market or the equity market, right? So think about, and I always explain it like this, think about taking your Finance 101 class in college, right? And your professor pulls up a sample of a balance sheet. And he says, okay, class, take a look at the balance sheet. And the first thing he says, or she, right? He or she says, is the balance sheet is in order of liquidity, right? So you have your cash and equivalents, you have your securities, you have your property, plant, and equipment. And as you go down on the balance sheet, those assets on the balance sheet are less liquid, right? So property, plant, and equipment would be like real estate, machinery, or anything like that. And the real estate market, if you're trying to sell a house, it's not like you can log on to Charles Schwab or Robinhood and click sell and it automatically sells your house. No, it takes time. So I still think some sellers are saying, hey, my neighbor sold his house for $200,000 over asking. I want to be able to sell my house for $200,000 over asking as well. But what they don't understand is that when your neighbor Fred sold his house for $200,000 over ask, we were in a significantly different interest rate environment, right? Rates have now moved, almost 500 basis points. They probably will move 500 basis points by tomorrow. We have the FOMC meeting. So we're finally just starting to see sellers capitulate a little bit here and start to meet buyers in the middle at a more reasonable price. Thus, henceforth, last month, in February, existing home sales actually went up about 14%. And this is good. This sort of puts the lubrication in the market, gets things moving. And I think you're going to see sales transaction volume pick up a little bit here, but the prices that they sell for are going to be a little bit lower.
For the train, brother?
No.
$.
No. So we'll see. Hey, Nina, this is exactly Tom. Interest rate is not in the equation for many sellers. Agreed. P. Escobar says, I live in Midtown West and still see houses selling for outrageous prices. One just sold for $1.5 million today. Things are crazy to me because it was a starter home. If you ask me, it wasn't worth it. So Midtown, you're talking about what, a condo or a co-op, something like that, sold? How many bedrooms, if you don't mind me asking? What was sort of the setup? 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, 2 bathrooms, what do we got? But yeah, interesting stuff. All right, let me read a couple more of the comments here. Hey, Paul Medis, welcome. Ron6751 says, Walks from Wall Street, is New Jersey towns that are close to New York City, do they have cheaper cost of living, or is that a myth? Well, it can be a myth and it sometimes can't be a myth. But you'd be surprised if you go to Hoboken, New Jersey, right? Which is actually a really, really nice town. Now, the first time I've ever been to Hoboken, New Jersey was during the Big C, okay? The Big C. We can't say the name on the stream or else we'll get shadow banned and demonetized. But the first time I went to Hoboken, New Jersey, blown away. Gorgeous, it's clean, and the views from some of the apartments in Hoboken, New Jersey, you're not going to get a better view than Lower Manhattan than living in Hoboken, New Jersey. So, even those type of apartments are getting bid up too. It's not uncommon to see, a 1-bedroom apartment in Hoboken, depending on if you have a World Trade Center view, for like $4,000. It's not uncommon, and plus all of those buildings down there, I know I shouldn't say all, but a lot of them are new developments. A lot of them have, swimming pools, gyms, amenities out the you-know-what, and that's also keeping prices elevated. So, I don't know. I guess it really just depends on where you're commuting from in New Jersey, but a lot of those towns that are very, very close to the city are actually becoming quite fashionable for a lot of commuters. I don't know, anybody in the chat live in Hoboken, want to chime in? You know, what are you seeing? Where are rents going? All right, one more shot of the Chrysler building here. Steph UH is when I hear Hoboken, I think of Frank Sinatra. I do too, actually. Sharon Lee says, hey, how much is your home insurance in Florida? Too much, and I'm probably going to get freaking smoked over the face next week. So I got to go back to Miami next week. April 1st, I got to let in an inspector. So my insurance company, which is called Citizens, right? So for those of you who may not be familiar with Southern Florida, and Florida in general, but more so Southern Florida, it's a beautiful place to live, okay? So many people are moving there. I would still suggest people move there if you like the climate, if you like the temperature, but you really, really, really gotta watch out for the very, very expensive insurance costs, okay? That's gonna be a very big problem, especially on a lot of these commercial buildings. It could be a big issue here. For a couple reasons. Number one, in Southern Florida, you had a lot of roofing scams go on throughout the years. But also, a lot of insurance companies in general, private insurance companies, are choosing to pull out of the state of Florida altogether because they can't make money, right? Hurricanes come, they destroy everything. Then they have to raise the premiums so ridiculously high. So now, there's pretty much only one insurance company in the state of Florida. Now, I'm using a little bit of hyperbole here. Okay, there's obviously not just one insurance company, but there's a very, very big one that the vast majority of people use, and it's called Citizens. And it's pretty much just a government-backed, government-subsidized insurance company. And I think my premium is going to go up again. So I'm a little bit nervous. I'm a little bit nervous about it. But I think my insurance right now is right around $3,500, I think. And I think it's going to go up even more, if you could believe that. So I'm ready to take a big beating next week. But we'll see. It seems like everything's going up. When does things not go up? When does things go down? Anyway. P. Escobar says, I live in Midwest South
Safe travels.
Dakota. Oh, South Dakota. I thought you were talking about Midtown Manhattan. Let me see. Hold on. Let me read this. P. Escobar says, I live in the Midwest. Sorry about that. Totally misread that. So South Dakota, the place is 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and it sits on a half acre. 2,200 square foot. That's beautiful. Wow. Man, when I hear that kind of square footage here, I think, wow, that is a huge place. Just to give you some context, I think my studio apartment that I had, I want to say it was less than 500 square feet. I think so. I think my studio apartment that I had on Central Park South was just a tad under 500 square feet, if you can believe that. So, yeah, there's a little bit of comparison for you, man, of how people are living here in New York. Anyway, but thank you for sharing that. That's some good data. This is the Yale Club. This sits right on the corner of East 44th Street and Vanderbilt Avenue. Hey, Zozo Bob says they still haven't fixed the property insurance problem in Florida. Zozo Bob is a native of Florida, right? And I think he is very successful in the real estate business. What do you think could be a possible fix for that? I don't even know how they would fix that, to be quite honest. Don't Be Evil says, considering high risk of hurricanes, why people even moved to Florida in the first place? I can't understand this. It is a very friendly business climate. Hurricanes have been happening since the Earth was, since the Big Bang. It's gorgeous down there, and the quality of life is unmatched. Those were my reasons, but. Yeah, that's true. Entire nation subsidizes Florida via FEMA. Same with a lot of the other states, right? And other places like New Orleans that gets hit by hurricanes a lot, things like that. But you guys are making good points. Hey, Hang with Mark Mom, what's up? Says, hey Tom, I love Hoboken. Home of Cake Boss. Oh yeah, that's right, that guy Cake Boss, you're right. They offer a free donut to incoming students at Stevens Institute of Technology. Stevens Institute of Technology. I've definitely heard of that. I think their mascot is the Ducks, right? Stevens Institute of Technology Ducks or something like that. Hey, Western Mass Dave, this is Tom. Do you have someone to keep an eye on your Miami property when you're in New York City? Yeah, I do. So I rent it out. When I'm not there, it is rented out. And obviously, if you guys could see what's been going on with the spring breakers, for whatever reason, everybody, over the past 3 years, spring break in Miami has been a freaking horror show. They got to get that under control. I mean, I think a couple people unfortunately passed away. There were shootings down there. I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm not there. But look, I mean, people want to have a good time. People want to have fun. I get that. But when it gets too out of hand like that and you start having, fights and shootings, it just ruins it for everybody, and it's not safe for the people who live there. So, I mean, that's unacceptable to me. I was seeing some of the coverage on the news. That's just unacceptable. They have to do better. Hey, Evan Weeks, it's like Panama City Beach, but even worse. DJ's reviewing under 2 says my dad lives in Union City, New Jersey. P.T. Smith says, Tom, years ago, Harriet Chaplin moved to Hoboken, and the other hipsters followed. The city went from the pits to the top. It's a beautiful city, man. And the thing about Hoboken is very easy to get to the city via the PATH train. Let me take you guys inside the Grand Central Terminal here. Yeah, somebody's asking, do I have a favorite economist? There's a tie. And I would really, really suggest everybody that's watching this live stream follow these 2 specific economists, one of which being Mohamed El-Erian. So Mohamed El-Erian, you've probably, see him all the time if you ever watched Bloomberg. He's a frequent contributor to Bloomberg, and I think CNBC also. I think less so CNBC, more so Bloomberg, but he's a really, really sharp guy, really, really smart guy. So I would say Mohamed El-Erian and Peter Schiff. I would say those are the main 2 economists that I think have a good grasp on what's going on. But I don't know, anybody else have any suggestions? I would say those 2 are really, really smart and very well respected people too. 45 says, Tom, Italy was also talking about cracking down on mass tourism and major tourist attractions because how out of control it can get in Italy, really? 45, it's interesting you mentioned that. One of my best friends who I went to college with, he's actually in the Special Forces. He's in the Air Force, but the Special Forces division of the Air Force, I think it's called a TACP. It's sort of like a Navy SEAL in the Navy SEALs, but in the Air Force they call them TACPs. Anyway, he's on a deployment in Italy, and he says he loves it. He says he would want to live there, move there. So I'll have to ask him about it. I didn't know it gets crazy in Italy. Strange. All right, everybody, real quick. This is not the main entrance. I lied. This is one of the main entrances to Grand Central Station. This is called 200 Park Avenue. So you're going to take the escalators down, and look at how gorgeous this train terminal is. Now, my favorite thing about this station is the lights here. Evan Weeks, you're right. Yeah, Tactical Air Control Party. He's a combat air traffic controller, calls in warheads on targets, meanwhile deployed with the Marines, Army, Navy SEALs, etc. Yeah, that's what he does. He was a crazy guy in college too. Wild. Now, he grew up in the mountains in Arizona. I don't want to give too much away about this guy. He's probably going to come home and give me a beat down, but while he's in Italy, I guess we could talk about it. He grew up in the mountains in Arizona. I think it's called the Huachuca Mountains. And, you could just imagine what he looks like. I mean, those special forces are crazy. They just work out all day, train like hell. Thank God we have them, I guess. Anyway, guys, this is now Grand Central Terminal. You can see the east balcony where it has the Apple store. Speaking about Apple caught a very big bid today. I think it was up about 2% on the day. And funny enough, we're seeing a big flight to the mega caps. Anybody notice the recent outperformance as it relates to mega caps and small caps? Google caught a big bid. Amazon's actually rallying. Meta is rallying too, but I think the biggest gainer on the day in terms of the mega caps was actually Apple. Had a really, really good day. Hey, the RVer TV. What's up, man? Good to see you again. The RVer TV has a pretty cool channel as well. Always appreciate him joining us on our chats here. Yeah, Ryan Beck says the top 6 are holding up everything. You know, I think this is just a big flight to safety, although a lot of the more high beta SaaS stocks, right, the software as a service stocks are catching a pretty big bid too. Now check out Palo Alto Networks. We've been talking about this one for a long time. Because essentially what's going to happen, I'll quickly show you guys the ceiling of Grand Central Terminal. What's going to happen in a lot of businesses is small, medium-sized, and enterprise customers, especially their IT departments, are going to be looking for any specific fat to trim. And in the industry, because that's pretty much my background, is in telecom sales, software sales, and when times are good, organizations tend to buy something that's called, a nice to have piece of software, right? But when times are tough and you're losing customers and you're bleeding cash, those are the first types of software to go, right? You cut all of those SaaS products. However, there is a specific market that is almost impossible to cut. And in my view, that's the cybersecurity market. So some names that I think about is like Palo Alto Networks. They're big in zero trust technology. And the stock's trading only 20 points away from all-time record highs. I think the stock was up 2% today. So I think what you're going to see is a flight to quality. If a lot of these businesses and organizations are cutting a lot of their SaaS spend cost, they're probably going to double down, if not triple down, on building and refortifying their cybersecurity infrastructure. That could very, very well give a big boost to some very specific, I should say, cybersecurity companies. I think cybersecurity is one of those markets that may be recession-proof if you're looking for a job or something like that. Because again, it's not a nice-to-have piece of software, it's a must-have piece of software. And hardware too, right? If you're building out an SD-WAN infrastructure, you need routers from Fortinet or even Palo Alto Networks routers. I've sold a lot of them. Hey, Dan Zangs, Tom. Yes, so Dan, a lot of changes have been going on. I'll have to update you guys here pretty soon. Nina says, Tom, Amazon laying off more employees. I saw that too. I think Amazon announced an additional 9,000 job cuts. Now, it's going to sound a little bit cynical, but that's actually very good for the stock. It sounds horrible to say, and it pains me to say it, right? I'm not a sociopath. I don't like to see people losing their jobs. But as we talked about before, when times are tough, organizations look to trim fat. And I think Elon Musk really set a precedent with this Twitter acquisition. He laid off about 80% of the company. I mean, think about that for a moment. Elon Musk laid off about 80% of the employees at Twitter. And we could argue back and forth, but generally speaking, I think people would agree that Twitter is running just fine, right? There may be some bugs and glitches here and there, but for 85% of the employees to be cut, it's running all right. Now, you don't think that the CEO of Microsoft is seeing that? You don't think the new CEO of Amazon is noticing that? Alphabet and all of the other tech companies? Saying, if we can slash our overhead by maybe 15% or even just 8%, imagine all the cash that is going to free up. That's a significant amount. And that's going to hit the bottom line. And you also have to take into consideration here, guys, that these are very high-paying jobs. You think about Meta, right? Just announced an additional round of layoffs too. These people are making 6 figures. Oh, look at this, they opened the restaurant. I think this is called the Oyster Bar. Now, this was closed down for the entirety of the C-19 pandemic, so it's actually kind of nice to see a reopening again. Yeah, Ryan Beck makes a good point, says I think they doubled their staff in 1.5 years. They did. A lot of those tech companies suffered from corporate bloat, and we talked about this too. And I think Evan Weeks provided some really good insight and context here because, that's his background as well. And a lot of these tech companies, as they grew and raked in windfall profits, they really suffered from corporate bloat. And let me tell you, from working at one of these big telecom companies, working at a big tech company, I can guarantee you corporate bloat is real. Sometimes you walk in the office, it's like, what do these people do? You don't even know what they do. But hey, Paul Meddes, good to see you. Welcome. Let's exit the way we came out of, because I want to show you guys the progress on the brand new JP Morgan Chase building. I believe it's 270 Park Avenue. It's a beautiful police dog in the bottom right. Do you guys see that? German Shepherd, love that. But Jamie Dimon is building his brand new office tower right here in Manhattan. I believe the address is 270 Park. Now, I walked past it today, and they're finally starting to put the glass on the side of the building, so it looks pretty unique. Hey, Evan Weeks says, yeah, Tom, I read a job advertisement today where the company wanting to hire me bragged about nearly tripling their headcount over the last year. Wow. Yeah, now I bet it was a startup, right? And I bet the pitch was like, hey, we are a VC-backed. Does anybody ever get these pitches by a lot of recruiters? Hey, we really like your background. I'm recruiting for this company that's a VC-backed this. The venture capital firm also took this company public. There's an equity package, this, and they dress it up with all these buzzwords. I actually tend to stay away from those. The more buzzwords you use in the, I would say the interview pitch, the less interested I get. In my view, the more buzzwords you use, I think there's probably a direct correlation with unprofitability, perhaps. All right, let's head out this way. We'll head up. Now, I want to mention one other thing about this existing home sales report that I think is very important to mention. Now, once again, for those of you who are just joining, if you type !NAR in the chat, once again, !NAR, the Nightbot is going to drop the link to the National Association of Realtors existing home sales report. And there was an interesting quote. From one of the respondents. And the quote went something like this. They said, we're starting to see multiple offers over asking on some homes again. Did any of you guys see that? And during that time, it actually correlated with that very brief drop in interest rates that we had last month. So I'm wondering, wow, look at this. A gorgeous view of the Chrysler building here outside of Grand Central Terminal. So I'm wondering if this massive drop in interest rates that we just have, we're going through it right now, this massive bond market volatility, just look at the 30-year fixed rate mortgage right now. Well, granted, now it's back to, I think, 6.75%, 6.755%, I think, today. But just before the weekend, guys, the average 30-year fix was 6.5%. When before this banking crisis, it was 7.25%. So I don't know. I think maybe that could have spurred some buying activity. Because if you look at I think it's about a third of the way down the page. If you look at it, it directly correlates with that period of time last month when you had a little bit of a downtick in rates. Right, there was a huge amount of buying in the bond market. Rates came down. The 10-year U.S. Treasury yield came down. The 30-year fixed rate mortgage came down. And that correlated with the exact time that some homes on the market started to see multiple offers again. So we'll see. Existing home sales transactions are still significantly down by over 20%. Hey, JM says, yeah, saw this Grand Central area in so many movies of the very deep past, the 60s and 70s. It's one of my... The Long Island Railroad goes. You guys see with the two cranes on top? Brand new, or it will be the brand new office tower of JP Morgan Chase. But as we get closer, you'll start to see they're just putting the glass on the side of it. I think we have to go to Madison Avenue in order to see that. Hey, Hang with Mark Mom says, I may be buying another home very soon. I could always refinance in a few years. 6.75 is nothing compared to the 8.25 from the 90s inflation era. That's a good point, Hang with Mark's mom. It's a good point. Now, I will say this. Again, the good news, and I think this is the broader trend that we've been talking about, right? And this is like the money show here, is, again, step number one is sales transactions dry up. Then step number two is prices come down to match the buyers, right? So we're just coming off a period where we have 12 months in a row of existing home sales declines. Now, this report that we just got out broke that trend. But did you notice what correlated with the break in trend? It was a decline in price. We haven't seen that before. And we're just starting to see it now, which is good because, some sellers, right, and I'm not trying to be mean or anything, I'm just trying to be a realist. I think some sellers are still disillusioned, right, are still in this delusional phase of, if I list my home on the market, I'm going to get $100,000 over asking, right? I think those days are gone, right? And we know those days are gone because of the data that's come out. So I think over the next, here's my prediction. I'll just give you my prediction. And again, my predictions mean nothing. I could be 100% wrong. We just do this show to have a good time and hang out. But if I had to make a prediction, look at all this garbage, Maron. Look at this. Right outside of the pizza shop. Tons of garbage lined up. I would say the next 6 existing home sales reports are going to see home price declines, right? Again, I'm not calling for an Armageddon, but you're going to see prices come down a little bit. Sellers are going to notice that their homes are sitting on the market for longer than expected, and they're going to be talking with their advisors, with their real estate agents, and they're going to be like, okay, we'll reprice this to a more reasonable price. I mean, at least that's what I think is going to happen. What do you guys think? You think I'm off base there? Do you think you're going to see prices continue to go up? You think we're going to see the market cool a little bit? I wouldn't be surprised to see prices come down and transactions pick up a tad bit here. All right. Hey, Outer Haven says, hey Tom, what's your thoughts on the car market? Any relief coming soon? Well, I'm not an expert in vehicles. I don't own one, but I'd like to give you a good resource. Now, I'm not sure if you have Twitter or not, but there's this guy on Twitter. I follow him on Twitter. I think he's called the Dealership Guy. So if you follow at the Dealership Guy, I think it's an anonymous gentleman who I think owns multiple car dealers. And he gives his audience, right, the people who follow him on Twitter, real-time data on used vehicle and new vehicle prices. So I would direct you to that. There's a lot of alpha to be had on Twitter. The people on Twitter are very, very smart. However, if you look at the CPI report, this is the only thing I could tell you from the CPI report that we got out last week. New car prices actually went up. Did you guys see that? If you type !CPI in the chat, the Nightbot will drop the link to the CPI report. This is the JP Morgan Chase building. You can see the iron workers welding the steel I-beams here. But if you look at the CPI report, you had new vehicle prices actually go up, but used vehicles went down. So that was actually kind of interesting. And you guys, you can see they're putting the glass on the JP Morgan Chase building now. Hey, Shadowstock, what's up? Speaking of a good follow on Twitter, Shadowstock is also a very good follow on Twitter. So now that we talk, we're on this topic where we talked about, inventories, right? And if you take it back to basic economics 101, if you really want to see home prices decline significantly, you're going to need to see inventory come onto the market. So let's talk about that now. Inventory on a month-over-month basis was actually unchanged, right around 980,000 homes. That equates to about 2.6 months worth of supply. Now, again, that's on a month-over-month basis, right? So we're not really seeing a pickup in inventory. Oh, I think this guy just got pulled over. Maybe it's like a convoy or something. So on a month-over-month basis, we're really not seeing a pickup in inventory. But the good news is on a year-over-year basis, inventory is up about 15.5%. I think you're going to see that trend continue to accelerate, especially if we get a big bid in unemployment. Now, we talked about, yes, a lot of people who bought homes locked in very, very low rates, and they don't want to sell their homes because they want to keep those low rates and those low monthly payments. But there's also another dichotomy that we need to talk about, and that is the percentage of sales that are from distressed sales, right? So when I talk about distressed sales, I mean foreclosures and short sales. Now, there is a direct correlation between the uptick in short sales and foreclosures and unemployment, right? You can sort of look at this data going back to 2008. Really quick, this is 47th Street in Madison. I just gave you guys a quick tour of the new JP Morgan Chase building. But again, if you look at the National Association of Realtors existing home sales report that came out today, only about 2% of total sales transactions in the month of February were from distressed sales and foreclosures. That is unchanged month over month, and that is unchanged year over year, which makes sense because unemployment is still at a record low. Usually when you start to see a lot of short sales and distressed sales, people are in trouble. Maybe you lost your job, unfortunately, and you can't pay your bills, right? I'm not saying I want that to happen, by the way, but I'm just making an observation. If the Federal Reserve stays steadfast with raising rates, which I think they will do, by the way, tomorrow, I think they're going to raise by 25 basis points. I think you're going to continue to see this trend of companies laying people off. We just saw the news about Amazon, right, with additional layoffs. Here we have 432 Park Avenue here. I think that could be a particular catalyst for maybe 6 months to a year down the road, where maybe 5% of sales are from foreclosures and distressed sales, right? That could be a potential way that inventory comes onto the market to force people to sell. But as of right now, again, inventory in the used home market, existing home market, is about 980,000 units. That equates to about 2.5 months worth of inventory, assuming the same amount or pace of sales, if you will. All right, East 49th Street in Madison. This used to be a Starbucks right here. Now it's completely vacant. I actually used to go here with clients before. I think they just closed it down. Hey, Julia M., what's up? This is also, as far as unemployment goes, probably 2/3 of the layoffs over the last 2 months are not going to be able to collect unemployment because they have severance. That's true. I wanted to ask you guys this as well, okay? I wanted to ask you guys this as well, because I actually don't know, and I think some of you may know in the chat. Let's say, for example, you get laid off, right, at Meta or something, or anywhere for that matter, and you get a 6-month severance. Do you get counted as unemployed after the severance? Is there a lag there, or does that not matter? I don't know how that works. I actually want to ask you guys that, because I was thinking about that. 3 months ago, we really started to get hammered with all of all the layoff news, right? Now, to be fair, a lot of those employees, thankfully, were able to be absorbed back in the marketplace. But for those who weren't, are they going to start showing up in the unemployment numbers now? Or did you guys not know? Randy the Machine says yes. Oh, James Dixon says no during. This is St. Patrick's Cathedral, by the way. So this is the rear side of it. We very seldom do we say this. Fellow Traveler says during. I'll have to look it up. Hey, Joan K is here. What's up, Joan? Welcome. Big Talk says, Tom, I'm thinking about finishing my job tomorrow. Oh, so you mean you're gonna quit? Is that what you're saying? Well, if you do, good luck to you, man. I wish you the best. Hey, Zubin H says, yes, there is a lag. Unemployment starts after your severance period. So, Zubin, that's what I thought, but I didn't know for sure. And I know a lot of you are saying, well, can't you just Google it? I know, I did. I tried. And I got 50 million different answers. So, look, this could be a potential lag here. This could be a potential lag. All right, this is the New York Palace. This is one of the most expensive hotels in New York City. Julia M, let me go back to your chat. It says you collect unemployment when the severance is over, and unemployment has to be divided into the severance. So $504 into the gross of the severance. Copy that. Okay. Yeah, I mean, so maybe we'll see a little bit of an uptick there. Who knows? Hey, B. Smith is joining us. Happy Tuesday. But if you guys are enjoying the live stream tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video. Click the subscribe button if you're new here. Share the show with your friends. We usually do these streams about 7 days a week between New York City and Miami, talking about the financial markets and such. I'll cross here so I can give you a more inclusive view of the Empire State Building. We're actually close to Jeffries as well. All the way in the back, you can see 30 Rock. Hey, Richard. What's up, Richard? Says, Tom, here in Canada, they will show up in the numbers and severance does not matter. You will still collect I-14 after your last check or pay it. So that depends on how they pay you. Okay, got it. All right. Well, it's good. See, this is why I like the live streams, because it's real-time feedback. I didn't know that. So. Fellow travelers, as soon as going to fade the rally tomorrow, what is the consensus? All right, we'll talk about that now. I think we covered the existing home sales report in great detail. Now, I had a really good friend, still my friend, older gentleman, and he was a very successful trader at Goldman Sachs. And he says on FOMC day, and now look, this is just what he says, right? He says the talk around the trading desk always is the first move is the wrong move. Every time, that's what he would say. So if you're trying to intraday trade, this is the Omni Berkshire place, by the way. This is another really nice hotel. I've actually stayed here before, very nice. So if you're trying to sort of intraday trade or get cheeky around the FOMC, anybody hear that before? The first move is the wrong move on FOMC all the time. I don't know, but I'm still under the consensus that we're gonna raise by 25 basis points. Oh, Hang with Mark says my son was given a lump sum and he was able to file quickly. Ryan Beck says, yeah, that's usually true. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. You know, the VIX, what did the VIX do today? I actually didn't get a chance to look. Usually we would have some volatility in the VIX going into the FOMC. Now, if we do a rundown on what a lot of the major investment banks and other major financial firms on the street, such as Jefferies, which is right here. Now, I think the bank that is the most out of touch, I think, and look, maybe they're right, maybe I'm wrong, but Nomura came out and essentially their consensus is that we're actually going to get a rate cut by 25 basis points. I don't think that'll happen. I mean, I think that's a little bit crazy. Now, Goldman Sachs is saying something similar, but they're forecasting a pause, which means there'll be no rate hike and there'll be no rate cut. They're just going to hold steady. I also think they're not going to do that because, again, rewind 2 weeks ago, right? I know in the financial markets it's like, you know, we run in dog years here. But Fed Chair Jerome Powell came out and he literally told the market that we are going to be surprised with how high rates go and how long they stay there. Because inflation, in his words, we're getting out of control. And this is after we got the inflation numbers out, the Fed's preferred inflation measure, the PCE. And he said, look, you know, inflation's becoming ingrained in the economy. Inflation is becoming very sticky. We got to raise rates higher for longer. Then you had a big banking crisis. Then you had the backstop or the bailout, whatever you want to call it. I don't really want to argue about it. So if they cut, I think you could see huge volatility and maybe even a limit down, because the market would interpret that as, well, okay, what changed in 2 weeks that you were so steadfast on raising rates in order to kill inflation because it was getting out of control, and now you're doing a whole 180 because of this banking crisis. The market's going to say either, number one, the Fed is going to let inflation run wild, because if they don't, the system is going to implode, and that's going to freak people out. Or two, that would signal to the market that there's going to be more contagion, or the cockroach theory that we talked about. Which I still think there's going to be more contagion, but we'll see. This is East 55th Street. Yeah, Steve CR, what's up? Ryan Beck says 25 basis points save message around commitment to bringing inflation down and also being data dependent. That's true. Now, did anybody see the tweet from Bill Ackman saying that we need to pause rates? I think Elon Musk said that they need to cut by 50 basis points, which is crazy. Dan Zhang says trading during the FOMC can be so risky. Even if you get the direction of the trend right, you could get stopped out due to high volatility. Yeah, I agree, Dan. I don't really do any intraday trading. I never really have. Maybe when I was in college just screwing around, but that's really not what I do, because you got to understand something, right? Investing is a game of probabilities, right? I would much rather, do fundamental analysis on a company and stick to a systematic framework for investing, right? And just work my framework relentlessly, and you'll see some success instead of chasing the shiny object. Because if you want to trade intraday, right, you have to look at your competition. What is your competition based on time horizon? Well, we know that, right? So if you're trying to, here's another, look at this, all vacant here on Madison, 551 Madison Avenue. That looks about 3,000 square feet of vacant space there. There's more vacant space as you go up, but intraday, that is all the quantitatives and market makers. So if you as an individual say, okay, I want to be a day trader, well, you just entered the octagon, right? To use an MMA reference. You just entered the octagon with Ken Griffin from Citadel Securities. You entered the octagon with all the Stanford PhDs from 2 Sigma, jump trading, D.E. Shaw, pretty much the smartest people in the world that have PhDs in physics and mathematics, those are the guys you want to compete against. I don't want to compete against that, okay? You're competing against high-frequency traders and algorithms and the smartest people on earth. I don't want to do that, right? And if you actually look at the data, real quick, I'm going to show you guys 432 Park Avenue here. Intraday volatility has actually collapsed due to the introduction of algorithmic trading, which I think is actually a good thing. So I think day trading is a waste of time. All right, here's a view of one of the most iconic buildings on Billionaires Row, right here on 57th Street, well, 56th Street, and Park Avenue. Now, we briefly talked about elevator issues, right? Everybody remember when we were referring to One Vanderbilt today? Now, for those of you who don't know, maybe you're just joining the broadcast. One Vanderbilt that is adjacent to Grand Central Terminal actually had to be evacuated today. There was reports that there was huge rumblings and big shaking on a couple of the floors, so they evacuated the building. Turns out everything's fine. They were just doing construction on some of the elevators. But a similar problem happened with this building. Now, a lot of residents are reporting electrical problems. If it's too windy out, the building actually sways back and forth so noticeably that you can't even use the elevators. So a lot of crazy things. And this is one of the most expensive properties on planet Earth, by the way, too. If you go on Zillow or StreetEasy, I think the cheapest apartment for rent in this building, I think is $45,000 a month. So I think that's the cheapest rental in here is 45 G's per month. Gorgeous building, by the way. All the amenities you could ask for. I think they have a saltwater pool, gyms, really anything. Really nice building. Hey, Hawaii, what's up? Good to see you, Hawaii. I see my friend FredX. God bless you, sir. Always a pleasure to have you here. Now, speaking of quantitative trading and market making, this is 425 Park Avenue, and Citadel Securities also has some space in this building. If you want to see a video tour of this building, everybody, that's really good and well done, just go over to Bloomberg, right? Bloomberg's YouTube channel, type in 425 Park, and they'll actually give you an exclusive tour of Ken Griffin's office. Kind of cool. Beautiful building, Class A property. We talked about the flight to quality. A lot of these older buildings in Manhattan, specifically the commercial buildings, I think are going to remain vacant. The city's going to need to do something about, providing incentives to convert those spaces. But yeah, I think you're going to have a big flight to high quality office space. Hey, Kevin. What's up? Kevin Bennett is here. This is a good looking building. Happy Tuesday. Oh, everybody, happy spring. I was so busy I wasn't able to do the live stream yesterday, which I do apologize for, by the way. But yesterday was the official first day of spring. Thank you, God. Okay, so we're in the home stretch. All right, winter is officially behind us. It was a gorgeous day in Manhattan today. It was like 60 degrees in Central Park. I had a meeting early in the morning. I got out at like 11, and I walked through the park. It was like 60 degrees. It was really nice. So I think we are definitely on the mend. We're passing First Republic Bank. This is another bank that's having some solvency issues. Sally is here. Says, hey, Tom. What's up, Sally? Lila says, I hope New York City would have more stringent building inspections. Well, you gotta understand also, Lily, you're right, but if you build a building that tall, I think it's supposed to have a little bit of leeway. I think it's supposed to be flexible and sway in the wind a little bit. But, the taller you build it, the more crazy it's gonna be, especially if you live there full time. Hey, Melissa 2087, what's up? This wasn't much of a winter, to be honest. It really wasn't. It was a weird winter, though. it was a really, really strange winter where we had maybe 2 weeks of brutal cold. Does anybody remember we were doing the live streams Thanksgiving and Christmas and it was below zero? We had like this polar vortex. I mean, doing the live stream around, this looks like it's about to cave in here. They got to do something with that. You guys see that? Looks like it's about to cave in. You know, but it really, really sucked doing the stream around Christmas time. I mean, it probably looked beautiful for the viewers, but it was definitely not a fun time for me. It was like below zero, windy for like 3 days in a row. It was horrible. Yeah, John Kelly's like, we had exactly 12 days of winter. Look, I don't mind that. I don't mind that. I'd rather have it warm any day of the week. Hey, Valerie Rogers. Today is Taco Tuesday. Very nice. Good to see you, Valerie Rogers. Brian says, Tom, as of 2 months ago, all Two Bros pizza locations across New York City have increased its slice prices from $1 to $1.50. Get the hell out of here. Are you serious? That's bigger news than the FOMC meeting tomorrow. That's insanity. Really? Oh my God. Guys, I got to tell you my favorite dollar slice place, okay? We're going a little bit off the rails, but that's all right. It's the second day of spring. The best dollar slice place in the city, okay? Go to Grand Central Terminal and go out this most southernmost facing entrance right across the street from the Chrysler Building. You're gonna see it immediately. That's actually good pizza, okay? I think I've mentioned this a couple times, but that's actually a pretty good spot. So if you want a dollar slice place that's actually decent, that's the best one in the city, 100%. Yeah, Outer Haven, that's a 50% increase. It's insane. I mean, everything's going up. Everything's going up. All right, now we are outside of the Trump Tower here on 5th Avenue. You can see all the construction from the Tiffany building here. Makina says, Tom, what do you think Powell will do tomorrow? I think they're going to raise by 25 basis points, and that's going to bring the Fed funds rate to 4.755%. I think interest rates are going to continue to go up, and I still think rates are going a lot higher. That's my view. We'll see if I'm wrong, but that is my view. And again, you know, talking about this banking crisis, that's a reason why we have a big problem here, okay? Because a lot of these banks, it's not just Silicon Valley Bank, it wasn't just Silvergate, it wasn't just, you know, the other bank, Signature. It's all banks, okay? They have huge exposure to a lot of these different bonds, right? Specifically mortgage-backed securities, where if they hold them to maturity, it's not an issue, right? The problem is if they're forced to sell those bonds to cover redemptions or withdrawals, well, those bonds are going to trade for like 50 cents on the dollar, maybe like 40 cents on the dollar, because interest rates have gone up so much. I mean, tomorrow we could very well have a 5% Fed funds rate from 0% in 2020. It's a pretty breathtaking move, if you ask me. All right, 5th Avenue, 57th Street. You're looking at the Louis Vuitton building here. This is also the main Trump Tower, too. Yeah, I know. Zubin H just can't believe they weren't smart enough to buy short maturities. Well, I think that has to do a little bit with the greed aspect, right? Because you're right. You know, it's called duration risk. And specifically at Silicon Valley Bank, they bought about $90 billion worth of mortgage-backed securities that yield about 1.5%, so less than 2%. And could they have bought, you know, shorter term treasuries to spread that risk around, different durations? Yeah, they could have, but remember the time we were in. Maybe I'll take you guys down here. You know, in 2021, the vast majority of the debt globally was negative yielding, right? So I think they saw, you know what, if we can get 1.5%, you know, we want to make some money on it. But I don't think they ever expected that rates would go up as fast as they did. More scaffolding is going up here. But you're 100% correct. You're 100% correct. All right, I want to point this out to you guys, and I want you guys to look this up. Now, the hotel is called Aman, I believe, A-M-A-N. And I just found this out the other day. I think this is the most expensive hotel in all of New York City. I think the room rates are like $2,000 a night for the cheapest hotel room right in here. Has anybody stayed here? I'm wondering, maybe we've had some viewers stay here before, but if you can see, it says AMAN New York. I think this is a Japanese hotel, and I think they're all over the United States. It's gorgeous inside. I was looking at some of the photos, but $2,000 a night? I don't know, guys. I think that's a little bit too expensive for my taste. Yeah, people are like, $2,000, a little bit out of my price range. It's a little bit out of my price range too. Gary Carpenter, yeah, I think we're gonna run out of battery soon, but not on my phone, on my gimbal. But we'll go until it dies. We'll go until it dies. Now, I think what's a notable factor in the market today also is a little bit of a relief rally in crude oil. Did anybody notice that? If you take a look at the crude oil futures contract, ticker symbol CL, while we're doing that, this huge building right here, as the car alarm is going off, this is the Steinway building. This is one of the most iconic buildings on New York City's Billionaires Row. Absolutely gorgeous. You have sweeping views of all of Central Park. And listen, if you buy a unit all the way to the building, you're so high in this, $2,000 a month is typical rent. Yeah, I know. Now, is this a relief rally in crude, or is this the bottom of the market? I don't think so. I think this is more of a relief rally. If you look at crude oil, we're trading well below the 200-day and 50-day moving average. We got hammered all week. We're pretty extended from the 200, so it's pretty fair to have some sort of a rally. But this isn't a good signal for recession. You know, if you have crude oil selling off like that, to me, that signals that the market is pricing in a higher probability of a recession altogether, right? If people aren't using oil, maybe demand will go down. People aren't going to travel as much. People aren't going to spend as much. So the demand for crude oil and gas and other different petroleum products will fall off a cliff. Maybe that's what the market is pricing in. I don't know. Markets usually are forward-looking by 6 months. I can tell you this. This is what I can tell you. And we've been having this discussion almost every single night. As we walk around New York City, as we walk around Miami, you know, this is a Tuesday night in the city, guys. And people are out at restaurants, people are out at the bars, the hotels are packed. It seems like consumers are still spending, but again, when we're looking at the financial markets, usually stock markets look out 6 months, right? They're forward looking. So we'll see. I don't know, do you guys think a recession is on the horizon? And do you think we could use crude oil as maybe a proxy for that? If you look all the way in the distance past all of this horrible scaffolding, you'll actually be able to see the gorgeous Radio City Music Hall. And in addition, you could even see the World Trade Center from all the way over here. Hey, Ann R says the Aman hotel rates per night are $26,000 or $2,600 to $5,000. It's an expensive hotel. I just found out about it the other day. God bless you. God bless you. Loyal says, UPS driver here, trust me, the spending is slowing rapidly. That is fantastic data. That is very, very fantastic data. So you're seeing it firsthand, packages. So what, I'm assuming you probably must deliver, Amazon packages galore and Wayfair packages and all this other type of stuff. My question for you is, when did you first materially notice the slowdown in shipments? Was it a specific date, or is this new here? What do you think? That's some really good data. Thank you for sharing that too. Brian says, yeah, recession is definitely coming up. Dr. Longus, what's up? Good to see you. This is Tom. The recession is already here. Hang with Mark Mom says, we have to take into account over how many companies allow for remote workers. That will affect the market change where it was not the same thing in the 90s. That's true. I think you're going to have a more dispersed. I think it's going to be good in the sense that some Midwestern communities and some very small rural communities are starting to benefit from the tech boom. Not just Silicon Valley, not just New York, not just Miami, but now with remote work, you could technically, in theory, be a software engineer at Meta or a software engineer at Amazon or whatnot. Here's another hotel bar. Not too packed, but packed enough for a Tuesday night. But yeah, I think remote work will allow smaller towns to share in a lot of the economic growth for sure. Nikki is here, says casinos are slowing, people are coming, but not spending like they used to. Free drinks / comps are getting knocked down, says Nikki. Yogi says Amazon would never give Amazon drivers less work. Loyal says after Valentine's Day it started to slow down significantly. Yeah, James Dixon says I'd like to hear from an Amazon driver. That's definitely very good data from a UPS driver. I really appreciate that. Now we're looking at these two buildings. These are my two favorite on Billionaires Row. You have 157 and Central Park Tower. So I think we're gonna, we'll actually make a right on 6th Avenue and head back down. I got a little bit ahead of myself, but before we do that, I'll quickly show you guys once more. This is the Steinway building on Billionaires Row. NAV 407 says the recession is not already here. Amazon is just going back to their level pre-pandemic. All Canadian banks have ordered staff back to the office for at least 4 days as of today. Wow. So how do you think that's going to be met, NAV? Because I could tell you that some of my friends, they're saying that if they require me to come back to the office, they're just going to find another job. Now, is that too brash of a decision? Maybe. But I think I'd like to ask the chat that. Now, of all the people who are working remote, or let's say you're working hybrid, okay? Let's say in theory tomorrow, your boss sends you an email, it's 8:30 in the morning, you open up your Outlook inbox, and your boss is telling you have to come into the office 5 days a week, no more remote work, no more hybrid work. Would you significantly consider quitting the job and working somewhere else that would allow you to work remote? I'm interested to hear some of the responses there. I think a lot of people would. I think materially a lot of people would choose to leave their jobs to have that flexibility. The Garlic says I'd quit. Wow, Richard Vogel says you'd quit. Wow, okay. Alex Wise says everybody says they will quit, but a lot of jobs are now only hire in person. That is true. However, I think that, during the pandemic, 100%, all of the leverage was with the employee. I think you're starting to see the shift to where the employers have a little bit more negotiating leverage. I do agree with that. Abdullah says, I would quit. Travel nieces, it depends on coworkers. It's too much to deal with, people issues at work. Interesting. That's an interesting take. Mark says, young people need to get into the office just to learn how to network. I think that's the comment of the night, quite honestly. And that is sort of the opinion I've held. Because if I look back on my career, I really truly believe the only reason why I was successful is because I was able to be in the office, in person, getting around the top salespeople in the office. Now, I've made this sort of comparison. I think that remote work is going to be really, really good for, the senior level people, right? If you're a vice president, a managing director, or if you are, maybe an enterprise account executive, something like that. But it is in my view that if you're very, very early on in your career, right? Let's say if you are, an investment banking analyst, you just moved to New York City. You don't need to be working remote, okay? You're 19, you're 20 years old. You need to be in the office. You need to be working 90 hours a week. You need to be building relationships with your seniors, your VPs, your managing directors. You need to be like an animal. You need to be breathing fire as required every day in the office to build your network. Same thing with an account executive. That's what I did. And I really think that's the only reason why I was successful in my role. So that's a good point. If you're young, you don't need to be in the office. You don't need to be playing video games. You need to be out making the big bucks. This is Alliance Bernstein, everybody. Now, the reason why I point out this building here, Alliance Bernstein, is because there's also a very notable hedge fund in here, and it's called Fortress Investments. Now, you may know Fortress Investments from Michael Novogratz. Now, Michael Novogratz got his career, he started off at Goldman Sachs, I think after the military. But then he went over to run money at Fortress, and now I think he owns his own company. It's called Galaxy Digital, where he actually tries to recruit a lot of junior bankers out of some of the bulge bracket banks to work as institutional salespeople to onboard institutions, family offices, and the like to the cryptocurrency ecosystem, if you will. You guys see this building right here? This is called 53 West 53. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, Tom, it's technically not on Billionaires Row. And you're right, it's not. It's not on 57th Street, but this is technically another addition to Manhattan's Billionaires Row. Now, the cool thing about this building, everybody, is that it's actually built very close, literally right on top of MoMA, which is a very famous art museum here in Manhattan. So 53 West 53rd, sometimes referred to as the MoMA building, is another ultra luxury, multi-million dollar apartment building in New York. I'll give you guys a better view from this angle. Again, you have absolutely stunning views of Central Park if you have a north-facing apartment. Now, if you have a south-facing apartment, here's the interesting thing. You have unobstructed views of not only the Chrysler Building, but One World Trade Center. You could see all of Radio City Music Hall, Rockefeller Center, and depending on the day, if it's a clear night like tonight, you can see all the way down to One World Trade Center. So right here, adjacent from the flagship Hilton Hotel, is another Billionaires Row building. Hey, Line Sync, what's up? Hey, Jonathan Richards, what's up, man? Long time no see. Hopefully you're well. Thank you for joining. Says, I agree, Tom, on young people being in the office. I mean, when you're young, you got to meet people. It's hard to meet somebody over Zoom, right? It's hard to meet somebody over Zoom. Very, very difficult. You know, I think the biggest hack, right, that you could do if you're a junior salesperson, maybe you're selling software, maybe you're selling whatever, you're selling copiers, I don't know what you're selling. You got to look at the leaderboards every single month in the office, pay very, very close attention to the people who are absolutely killing it. And what you want to do is you want to create a value proposition for those individuals. And you essentially want to work for them. And say, look, I'll split deals with you, I'll do whatever it takes. Even if we have to do an 80-10 split, you want to shadow these people, but you just don't want to be a leech, right? You have to have a value proposition. Maybe you provide leads for them, maybe you set appointments, maybe you cold call. There has to be something of a reciprocal value there. So that's what I would do. That's what I did. And that's how I learned, right? That's how I learned. Now, we closed a lot of business, and in the beginning, if we closed the deal, I didn't get the majority of the deal, right? I split it. I had a lower percentage split with the other sales guy. But as I started to get my footing and I learned how to sell the proper way in a systematic approach, I mean, you do very, very well, but you have to shadow the habits of the top performers. And the way you do that is provide some sort of value for them. Make a sales pitch, right? All right, talking about Charles Schwab, here we are. Now, Charles Schwab also got caught up in this little debacle here. Now, the CEO of Charles Schwab actually came out on CNBC last week. He bought the stock to sort of calm the waters. Now, do I think he did that because he believes the company is in great standing and there's nothing to worry about? No, I don't. But I think it was the right thing to do. I told this story. I was on a Twitter Spaces last weekend, and I think it was the former CEO of UBS, I think, or maybe it was HSBC. And he said something that really, really resonated with me and that really stuck with me. And he said, listen, I got involved in the investment banking business back in the old school days of Salomon Brothers, right? He said, when we were at Salomon Brothers and something went wrong, the senior leadership, bent over backwards for the customer. It was always about the customer. It was always about, doing anything you can to service your customers and do the right thing. This is Neuberger Berman. My good friend actually works. That's being unethical, you know what I mean? If you're dumping $3 million worth of stock when your depositors are about to lose everything, I mean, I think there should probably be some sort of criminal investigation there. Now, granted, if you look at the laws, right, the laws on the books, it's actually not illegal, technically. I think it's highly unethical. Maybe it's some sort of a breach of fiduciary duty, who knows, but I don't know, I don't think that's the right thing to do. This is Radio City Music Hall. We are now headed southbound. Yeah, we usually get some bad signal here. I don't know what it is. Usually by Radio City, we usually always get big buffering. But if you guys are enjoying the live stream so far tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video. This is UBS right here. Click the subscribe button if you're new. We do these live streams about 5 days per week or 7 days a week between New York City and Miami. Hey, good to see all of our viewers from Brazil. Welcome. All right, it's starting to get cold again. I may have to put my hat on. Hey, Richard Vogels' fantastic show. Learned a lot tonight. Thank you, Richard. I did too. I learned a lot about how they calculate the unemployment rate.
Oh yeah.
I never knew the calculation. Well, I was unaware of the calculation with the severance. Right over here is News Corporation. Come to a place and turn it upside down. I don't know why. It's Kevin Ramsey says, what's going on in Miami? Well, I think it's just the normal spring breaker stuff, right? But spring break has really gotten out of hand over the last couple of years. So I think there was a couple of shootings actually in South Beach. But again, unfortunately, these are people. And the crazy thing is, everybody, I was watching some videos of it on YouTube. There was tons of police. It's not like there was no police presence. These people are such savages that they're getting in a shootout literally right in front of the police. I mean, if that's where we are in the world, that's just, to me, that is just a total disregard for human life. Is if you know that there's a huge police presence, right? Everybody's on spring break trying to enjoy themselves in South Beach, and you get into a massive shootout about. This is the News Corporation building. Are we buffering here, guys? I think we may be buffering again. So here we are in New York City's Diamond District. This is West 47th Street, 6th Avenue. This is one of the most famous places in Manhattan as it relates to jewelry. Buffering was on and off. Yeah, we usually get some buffering for whatever reason, but I think we'll just do a quick recap of sort of the main points that we talked about today to wrap it up for the last 5 minutes here. Obviously, existing home sales actually went up 14.5% month over month. It was the largest monthly increase since July of 2020. If you want to look at a seasonally annualized or seasonally adjusted annualized rate, we're selling at about 4.58 million. So home sales are picking up. Again, I would really, really suggest to everybody take a look at this report for yourself. So again, if you type !NAR in the chat, the Nightbot will drop the link to the report where you could read through it yourself. We're finally starting to see prices decline, thank God. The median sales price declined 0.2% to $363,000. So after 12 months of existing home sales declines, we finally have a pickup in home sales with prices declining. As we talked about, that means sellers are starting to come to terms with reality and meeting buyers. So I think you're going to see a little bit of a pickup in deal flow, but the average deal size may be down just a tad. Now, if you want to look at geography or the region, you have the Midwest performing pretty well. You have the South performing pretty well, but you have the Northeast and the West in general with price declines. So you see big price pressure to the upside in the South, places like Florida. But in the Northeast, prices are actually coming down. And you're seeing the same thing with California. I think that's a flight away from some of the most expensive real estate in the country. I think consumers need a break. I think they're looking for a cheaper cost of living, better quality of life. I think a lot of people are starting to get that in the Midwest. We'll see if this trend continues. Yeah, Nina says sellers are meeting buyers is good. Southern California really needs homes, or really need home prices lowered. Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you look at some of the main problems, like homelessness in places like New York and California, it's a big issue. So Pacific Northwest too. Yeah, Michael Joseph says when Whole Foods prices are declining, people will be happy. Man, the wind, I'm not sure if you guys could hear it, but over the last probably 5 minutes or so, the wind has picked up like crazy. It's like 15-mile-an-hour gusts. This is Bank of America Tower. Ticker symbol BAC. Hey, Brad's Brains has read someone's tweet who was once a bond trader, said they played cards all morning on the FOMC day, said it was better trade with no premeditation. I think I read that same tweet today. I actually may have retweeted it. Well, let me put you guys down. The wind is getting so brutal, I gotta put my hat on. You guys can see the rat camera. All right, we are good. In a minute, you guys are gonna be able to see a really nice view of the Empire State Building. Now, tomorrow obviously is the FOMC meeting. If you guys want to connect with us on Twitter, we'll probably be on Twitter pretty much all morning for the FOMC announcement. You can connect with us at Walks Wall Street on Twitter. I may pop in some Twitter spaces too if you guys want to chat tomorrow. But look at that Empire State Building view. I mean, my God, that is gorgeous. Wow, I'm reading the chat about a lot of building in Florida. Let me read that again. And they're offering $400,000. Wow. What part of Florida is that? Now you really got to be careful with flood zones, different type of flood zones in Florida. Regardless of what some people will tell you, you really should avoid altogether. You really never want to buy in a flood zone. What you want to look for is flood zone X. Very low probability of a flood. Here we are outside of the Salesforce Tower. Now, the only other blaring news out of the report is that the percentage of first-time home buyers are declining still. Is it me, or do you guys think that tonight in New York there's been an above average number of horn honking tonight? I think it's a little bit above average. I would say about a 40% upside above average. I think a lot of people may be on, maybe, it may sound crazy, but if you think about everything that went on over the last weekend, right, with banking collapse, volatility, I think a lot of people are on the fritz. You never know. I mean, I sense it. I sense a lot of people are like angry. Wow, look at this view. You're overlooking Bryant Park. And once again, the One Vanderbilt building. Hey, SoCal Lawrence, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, Lex S, you're right. Hey, Natalie's here. What's up? Good to see you, Natalie. We are coming up on the tail end of the stream here. I might as well take you guys back to the office. I have to go there anyway. Oh, for sure. Yeah, Valerie Rogers. Some parts of Long Island, specifically like South Shore, Nassau County, that's why if you guys are looking to buy property on Long Island, and let's say if you see a really nice house, right, and you're like, wow, that's actually a pretty good price. I really, really wonder why this house is so underpriced in Oceanside, New York, right? Or any one of those towns that are really, really close to the water or on the canals. Well, it's because FEMA has required these homes actually be lifted. So assuming that you purchase that property, the moment you purchase that piece of property, by law you have to lift the home. And if you've ever driven in Oceanside or Long Beach, Island Park, Center Avenue, East Rockaway, what you'll notice is that a lot of the new construction and even some of the the older homes, it looks like they're literally elevated on stilts. So that's a reason why some of those homes are trading at below market value, is because they have to be lifted, and it can cost, sometimes $70,000 or more to lift that home. Hey, the Garlic, good to see you. Yeah, Joe Driver says the law went into effect during Superstorm Sandy. You're correct. Now, I think the law is, I think the maps by zoning is made by FEMA, but I think the laws are enacted by the specific town, such as Oceanside or something like that. But if you guys, like, for example, check out, just go on Zillow, punch in Oceanside, New York, and find a house that looks, wow, this house is pretty good. Why is it trading, $70,000 less than all the other ones? Chances are, if you scroll down in the listing, it'll tell you, the house needs to be lifted. It's in this zone on the canal, has to be lifted, things like that. Somebody's saying, Tom, what is the cost of living here in Manhattan? It's expensive. I mean, if you think about a one-bedroom apartment, I think rents have come down, but the average one-bedroom apartment, I believe, in Manhattan is like $4,900, if you could believe that. Now, again, those are Manhattan prices. Here's another shot of the Empire State Building. We'll go behind these cabs. Hey, Ron, says Tom, is Queens in general cheaper than Manhattan? In general, yeah. However, there's some parts of Long Island City that are really, really, really nice. There's some expensive high-rises in Long Island City. Queens is another big place, right? It depends on where you are. There's some places of Queens where you probably don't want to live, and there's some really, really nice neighborhoods of Queens too. Hang with Mark Mom says, how does a single person pay $4,900 in New York City? This is why I warn my kids to never accept a job in New York, Seattle. Yeah, well, I think the thing is, the opportunities in New York are so tremendous. It's just insanity, right? So again, like we were talking about before, if you're young and if you get a job offer in New York, I would take it. It's sort of like you're paying your tuition, right? Because the people you're going to meet, you got to understand the people that are in New York. Okay, these are some of the smartest people from all over the world congregate here to compete, right? Essentially, that's what you're doing. If you're working at bank XYZ, if you're working at software company XYZ, everybody who's working at these companies in Manhattan are competing with each other. So the competition is so fierce here. People make a lot of money here. And the network that you could build here is just, unbelievable. So if you pay your dues, you do it for, 5-6 years. Maybe you can, get a job in a cheaper to live city and you have that network and maybe you can maintain your compensation. But, I still think it's worth it. People ask me that all the time. Do you think it's still worth moving to New York? I say yeah. If you're young, I would do it. Because, the networking opportunities, the people you could meet, it's really unbelievable. You won't get that anywhere else. Sort of like you got to pay to play. Looks like they're doing some construction on the Herald Towers right there. Yeah, Nina says networking in New York is priceless. Also in parts of California too. Like, I was really, really close to moving out to Silicon Valley and working at a tech company there. Thankfully I didn't. But I'm sure I would have probably been built a great network there too, but in general you want to go to places where it's very competitive. Hey, DP says, Tom, what are your thoughts on Paul Tudor Jones? Love him. Paul Tudor Jones is one of the greatest, I would say, intermediate term trend traders of all time. Now, if you apply to work at Tudor Investments, it's like a PM or like an analyst or something like that. Rumor is that before you can start, you have to read, he gives you Reminiscences of a Stock Operator. Like that's a prerequisite to working at the company. And we were actually talking about reminiscences of a stock operator the other day, because there was actually a fire that broke out at the Sherry Netherland. And for those of you who don't know what the Sherry Netherland is, it's a very, very fancy hotel that's actually adjacent to Plaza Hotel. And if you're familiar with the story of Jesse Livermore, that's where he passed away on Thanksgiving. He, unfortunately committed suicide in that building. So yeah, I mean, Paul Tudor Jones is one of the greatest traders of all time. I would highly advise anybody watching, and if you follow me on Twitter, I always post these links you could follow at Walks Wall Street. But if you ever listened in on one of the Robinhood conferences, and no, I'm not talking, it's not the same Robinhood as the fraudulent broker-dealer, allegedly, right? It's the charity Robinhood. You should watch all of the Paul Tudor Jones and Stanley Druckenmiller interviews. They are pretty much worth their weight in gold. So if you just type in Robinhood conference, Paul Tudor Jones, Stanley Druckenmiller, it'll probably be the first result that pops up. You should definitely study all of those videos again and again and again and again. Yeah, I've said there's only a few people that, will make me turn on CNBC. And it's if Paul Tudor Jones is on, if Stanley Druckenmiller is on, or Ray Dalio. If they're being interviewed, I'm definitely going to tune in for sure. And Carl Icahn, I get a laugh. He always makes me laugh during the day. Wow, hang with Mark Mom, that's horrible. So sorry for your loss. It's just it's unfortunate for sure what's been going on. But team, we are now coming up against time here. We are right at the 2-hour mark, and we are right at my office. I had a great stream. We covered a lot. We talked about the housing market, existing home sales. Once again, if you want that data, if you type !NAR in the chat, it'll drop the resource that we were talking about tonight. We covered the FOMC meeting and much more. If you guys are new here, feel free to click the subscribe button. We'll be back tomorrow night at 8:30, live from New York, talking about the FOMC meeting. Is the Federal Reserve going to raise by 25 basis points? Are they going to pause? Or are they going to cut? Stay tuned for tomorrow night's live stream. Daniel Baca, thank you so much. Sabrina Fair, appreciate it. Cooking Bros, Steph UH. Lewis, thank you. Lemonade. Brian Abdullah. Hang with Mark Mom. I sent you an email, by the way. Deep Value Alex, thank you. Hawaii. And to the Mighty Bull, have a good night wherever you are, because there's always a bull market somewhere. You just need to know where to look. Everybody, have a great third day of spring. Finish the week strong. We're almost halfway through. I'll see you guys tomorrow, right here at 8:30. Bye for now.